What are you building?
We're already producing a bunch of revolutionary new materials in space.
When I go to network, how many results do I get? What are my results? What am I trying to get out of this thing?
They thought it was like suspicious, like money laundering stuff.
It feels like your pitch isn't polished yet.
We think this is truly the next big CRM for small businesses.
You don't want to do or say anything that provokes questions. I don't want to be thinking of questions. I just want to be falling in love, right?
Round of applause to the first founder on this edition of the Feedback Loop. Welcome, welcome. Yes, you're in that seat right there. This is your microphone. Hello, hello. Welcome. What's your name?
Thank you very much. Steph Crum.
Steph, are you ready? You're going to have a minute to pitch, and then you're going to get some Q&A and some feedback from us. Feeling ready?
Sounds good.
You have a minute. What are you building?
Thank you very much. So basically from producing cancer treatments all the way to diamond semiconductors for quantum computing, we're already producing a bunch of revolutionary new materials in space because the lack of gravity allows us to produce things with a precision that is otherwise impossible on Earth. So everything right now is done on the International Space Station, which is expensive, it's slow, and most importantly, it will disappear in 2030. So what we're trying to do at Reditus Space is develop an infrastructure of small-scale, reusable vehicles that is able to fulfill this whole and provide an architecture to be able to go to space and back on a reusable basis that is cheaper, faster, and more high cadence. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Under a minute. Good job. Building in space. I love it. We've had a few founders who are spacefarers in their nature, so this is exciting. I want to give an initial bit of feedback that'll lead to a question as a starting point. I think it did take me a little bit to get to, you said something about diamonds in the beginning and some other things. From a pitch perspective, I'd say often those narrative stories and where you're getting into, let's say, more thematic concepts can be useful, but maybe help me by saying even a one-liner first that gives me the context of what is it called? Reditus, you said?
Reditus.
Reditus?
Reditus.
Reditus is a space manufacturing startup. That first line then lets me understand from diamonds to this to that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm with you versus having to discover it about 10 seconds in and going, hold on, what is he building exactly? So the one-liner can often be a good context setter for the rest of a pitch, even though it might feel like you're giving the game away. But that's my next question. So, I feel like I've heard of a couple different people who think about space manufacturing. I think the big startup out of Miami, what is it, Varda-Space?
Varda-Space, yeah.
That's building and essentially saying, hey, our opportunity to do manufacturing from a space perspective, what's possible perspective. I've heard mimics and rhymes of this pitch. What's your version of it? Because I can imagine you're building software, you're deciding, I'm also going to build space factories, or what exactly is...
So the main thing for us is that we're trying to approach the logistics in a more holistic way, where we're trying to do it in a fully reusable manner. Being able to provide not just a vehicle that is going to burn up on reentry, but rather approach it in a way where, similar to the SpaceX philosophy, we're able to use the same infrastructure over multiple times, and that way reducing the price point as well as increasing the cadence.
Anchor us in something, kind of practical that we can feel in the comparison a little more directly.
The best equivalent that I have for you is the main thing that we're trying to provide is like a logistics architecture, right? Being able to get to space and back. Obviously, the part of getting to space has already been solved by whether that's SpaceX, Rocket Lab, whatever you want to get to. But down mass remains a really large problem. And that is solvable at a large scale, but that often is not compatible with individual missions. So whether there is an Earth-based perspective of it, the best part that I could make is in terms of down mass, getting back from space, we have the ability to do full tankers, but we to bring something to a large port, but then we don't have the small trucks to bring it to the actual locations where it has to go.
So like the ability to do small batch transportation, is
Correct.
that kind of what you're saying? And then where
particularly down from space, not up.
And who does that most benefit? Give us like the customer that's going to be your best and most favorite first customer.
Yeah, so for us, they're separate markets. The main one that we are really looking into is producing novel types of semiconductors, or being able to do the transportation for those people that are intending to do semiconductor production on orbit.
The anchor I might use, and it might be inappropriate. You can just be like, this is
absolutely.
wrong, but it's kind of sounds like this is the last mile for space, right? In space, they have a last mile, and that's getting back.
Yeah.
And if you can win that, then you can win the game, just as we thought about the last mile in traditional logistics and supply chain.
I think to a certain degree, yeah, I would always be hesitant to say the last mile because obviously there's then going to be a next one.
More miles after.
Yeah, but to a certain degree, I think that is
The last mile
a way
of the space phase of that transportation.
for right now, yeah.
And maybe I'm still a little bit. I'm
Are you
not
doing
going
the
to touch
lab?
and feel.
Like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what-
Yeah, so for us, we are solely about the logistics. So there are already implementation partners that NASA currently works with.
So you're renting from them?
So no, so we're basically renting volume out on our vehicle to people that are interested
It's
in
your
getting that.
vehicle?
Yes, exactly. So the reusability allows us to
Your
effectively.
vehicle is, and you've also designed the vehicle?
Yeah, that's what we're currently working on testing.
This is where maybe I the
manufacturing
touch
it.
and feel has still felt a little bit high level to me of like,
Okay.
I could have imagined you, because you keep saying the word logistics, right? And I get it. The outcomes is logistics improvement.
Sure.
But I was like, okay, are you, is this a novel craft that no one else owns? Are you renting a craft? Are you, purchasing the blueprints of someone else's craft? Which then complicates, okay, who do you as a founder need to be to achieve this mission, right? Because if you're a founder who's achieving a hardware mission, that's different than being the person who says, actually, a lot of this exists and is coming down in cost, and so we're going to teach people how to take advantage of it. There's a bunch of different business models that then are supported by that. So the craft is the thing.
Yes, correct.
So yeah, the way I was kind of hearing it when you first kicked it off was that there's these lab experiments that happen in the International Space Station, and then that will go away as the space station goes away. And so I thought, oh, well, you're going to be a mini space station, and you'll facilitate these laboratory experiments. And so I was like, that's not true. Somebody else will. So what I would love to have heard, what I think is that we are going to increase the number of things that go into space, and we're going to increase the amount of things we do in space, and then everyone's going into space, and no one has really put a lot of thought and effort into coming back. And that's you, and you're going to dominate and capitalize on that space and on that market. Like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. So if you tell me how big, I guess in this world, your TAM, right, is everything going into space, and then your opportunity is everything coming back, and then you're going to own that.
Specifically like small batches of things.
Correct. Yeah. So we're truly talking about not being able to do the in-space manufacturing market, although it has an enormous potential in the long run. Right now, is very much in an initial R&D stage. Right, we're at a point where we're still.
So it's not small on purpose. It's small because it has to start
It's small because of the market. The individual things are really valuable, and so there is still a lot of budget available for
it's
the
interesting.
missions.
Like the word logistics and this whole small batch thing that you also said a lot. And this is like, not just for you, but founders in general to think about how repeating certain phrases might accidentally steer an investor into thinking the wrong things are important.
Okay.
So like as you've pitched, I've thought like, okay, logistics is important. It is an outcome.
Sure.
The small batches of things is important. It is as a starting point, but those aren't the whole point of what you're building, right?
I
So
understand.
that, you saying we're going to start with a smaller vehicle that's going to take smaller batches, and here's why, and here's where the R&D is different than you repeating that as part of like the pitch. Because the pitch should be, here's the vision of what we want to be next year and over the next 10 years. And let me then go and describe more discreetly what the first year is going to look like, right? And so think a little bit about like where you're emphasizing some of that story.
That makes sense, yeah.
So where is it from a progress perspective?
So right now we're very early on. We're currently, we started this out of grad school. And so we're currently getting to a stage where, we've gone through our initial angel rounds and currently looking towards the future to get into a pre-seed. But right now we're just at technical development, getting to the point where we can nail the thermal protection and recovery.
Yes, I'll wrap my feedback in saying, the more you can bring some of the imagination of what this will be, both when you're telling that long-term 10-year story of like, here's what we want this company to be over this time horizon, but then let me make it more practical for you and also help you imagine our first product, which might still release in 2 years. I don't know the timeline on this sort of stuff, but let me help you also imagine that and get real practical. Because the more you can give me, again, you can make me dangerous in being able to imagine that stuff, then I get smart about asking you follow-up questions and getting to understand, again, qualifying you as a person, being able to achieve this and get into those weeds. So think about bringing a lot of that together.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Last two things I'll say is, one is, I think it's just general founder advice. You got to tailor your pitch to the audience. I think you're going to realize, hey, this is not a, very, we don't know the space as well as you do. And so you got to like dumb it down. And I think if you talk to somebody who predominantly invests in space tech, then you probably get a lot more technical. And then the other thing I would say is, as you think about, I really want to hear like what you see that nobody else sees, or what you've unlocked that nobody else has unlocked. Like what is this team doing? What have they built? What unique advantage do they have, or something that they've uncovered? Other than that, then it's just like, then it's just a bunch of young people like off to the races and at speed of execution. And I don't know if a really young team right out of school is gonna win if thing is super obvious to everybody else and there's other teams going to build it. But if you see something that nobody else sees, or you've unlocked something that nobody else has unlocked, or you're working towards a patent or a technology that'll allow you to do things that nobody else will, it's like, okay, that's interesting. People might eventually do it, but you do have a head start on this race.
That makes sense.
Super interesting, though.
Yeah.
And good luck on getting to space, or getting our stuff to space.
Exactly.
Well done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
When I'm curious, one of the things that I think about a pitch like this is often the person just knows so much more about what's doable and not doable, and to catch up is sometimes really challenging. How do you think about, I can think of two versions of the world where you say, hey, you do want to give me some of the details so that I feel like I can begin to have that second conversation with you. Or you might say, no, stay high level. I need to decide whether this is a thing I even want to learn about.
Yeah. So I look at it as, well, one, know your audience. Know this particular founder is going to have a harder uphill battle than others, because you can't just go into any VC and any partner. If you walk into too generalist of a fund, like somebody like me, it'll just be lost on deaf ears. And the only reason I would be in is because I thought it was cool. And I think it's like a vanity thing and I want to be in space. But other than that, like I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to diligence this thing. I'd have to talk to a million other people to come in and figure out what's here. So he can bring some of that to the table, right? And again, you're not going to do it in a minute, but things that you'd want to talk about are their team. This is one where like, I don't usually say that like indexing on advisors is a big deal, but
Right.
I think in this one, and this is going to sound condescending, and I don't mean it that way, but like, because they are kind of right out of undergrad, and this is a very technically sort of dense market that they're going into, like somebody might ask, like, who's the adult in the room?
Right.
Like tell me that there's somebody from NASA, or
Well, because there's also going to be a longer investment period in terms of R&D and building that first product, and so investors want to know, okay, unlike again a simple SaaS startup, not to also talk down about simple SaaS startups, but there you can go, great, you're going to launch in 3 months with some prototype, maybe you even have it already, and I can play with it as an investor, versus I have to trust you for a lot longer of a time horizon. One other thing that I think is, if you are that specialist founder, that specialist startup going to pitch to generalist investors, think about making yourself very marketable. As in, if that person can be good enough at understanding what you're building and why it's interesting, even team or whatever else it might be, such that when they're having a conversation with a different investor who might be a specialist or a friend of theirs, if you then get that person good enough, they might not want to invest, but their ability to mention you in a dinner conversation, or again to a person who they know is a specialist in the space, thinking about making yourself sellable and marketable by that person can be a good threshold to maybe try to meet.
Yeah, I'd almost say like the real goal, one is to practice the pitch. So get in front of all the investors, even the ones that aren't a good fit, but try to pitch in a way that investor understood enough that if they actually talked to one of their investor friends who did invest in space tech, they could do a good enough job pitching on your behalf.
Exactly. Love it. Pitching by proxy.
Yeah.
Shall we welcome the second founder stage?
Let's do it.
With a round of applause. Go ahead, tell us, what is your name?
Alan Yao.
Alan, are you ready to give us your pitch in a minute, get some feedback?
Yeah, let's get this over with.
Awesome. You have a minute. What are you building?
So I'm building Curbly. It's a property management software, and it's for individual landlords. So like, let's say a normal person, they own a few properties. They'd be able to manage their properties on here. And so how I got started with this is basically, when I first moved here, I just tried to pay rent. And so my landlord, they either wanted like Venmo or Zelle. And then so first when I tried using Venmo, basically they denied me. They said the amount was too much. And then when I like Zelle, the same thing happened. And then so I had to basically split the payments in half. And then later on, like when I tried to pay my friend for like some random thing, they like Venmo actually blocked my account because like they thought it was like suspicious, like money laundering stuff. And so I had to like contact the customer support. And so it was like just a big hassle, I feel like. And I mean, there's a ton of other features, but paying rent's like one of the features. Also screening tenants, for example. managing maintenance requests, keeping track of all the property documents, all that stuff, and
That's a
automating.
minute. You round of applause,
Okay.
don't worry. Want to finish that thought? Automating.
Automating like tax reports, basically like filing taxes. It's a feature I want to do.
I have a lot of questions as to the product, but I don't want to forget this piece of pitch feedback. So let me just give this one thing to you first. I don't actually mind that you're telling renter problems when selling a landlord product, because there is an intertwined story there, but not the way you did it. As in you said, I'm building this landlord property management software. Let me tell you my problems as a renter. The way I would shift this to make that work is you'd say, landlords actually suffer from not being able to give renters what they need. For example, renters can't do this, this, and this. But landlords actually wouldn't mind helping them. The problem is you'd have to use Venmo or you'd have to use this. There's no system for the landlord to enable split payments to happen. And so what we're building is a solution for landlords that helps them serve their renters better, right? And so making sure, because again, we went from like this property management startup, here are a bunch of my renter problems. That's why I'm building this thing. Again, maybe just tie those stories together. But again, a lot more we'll dig into.
Just for context, my immediate first feedback was just that you're building something for landlords, but you're articulating a pain for the tenant. And so this is a kind of a two-sided marketplace, but your customer is the landlord. So I want to hear the landlord, because what I really want to know, if you had the issue of, you had to pay Venmo or Zelle, like what's happening on the landlord side that they need to accept Venmo or Zelle? Like what happened to like accepting a check? Why can't they do, I don't know, PayPal or ACH or Wire? Like run me through those. Like why did they need to take that? And then how are you solving that for the landlord? And that'd be really interesting and compelling. It's like, okay, that's, then again, I'd learn something through all of that.
Yeah, just to like make that part really explicit, I want to make sure, because it's such a great point. What he's saying is, tied to what I was saying, which is like the landlord can't take split payments for a reason. Now, we don't know that reason. And you said earlier, the last pitch we just heard educated you on something. It's actually a fun fact I'd like to know. And it's probably a boring fact, to be honest, but I'm the type of person, and most investors are too, where like knowing how the world works is actually quite delightful. And so like, if there's some stupid reason that landlords don't take split checks, like it might be something to do with their taxes, or it might be a local regulation in this country doesn't allow two people to be on a check when you're paying for property, whatever it might be. So if you have that sort of information that then validates all of this stuff, it might not seem that relevant, and yet it still is actually part of the story. But let's get into some of that a little bit. Maybe let's start, my first question is kind of this, why do landlords not allow us to already do some of this stuff? Because it's not technology.
Well, I mean, most landlords right now, like if they own a few properties, they do take checks, they do take Venmo, Zelle, and they do maybe PayPal as well. But I think like a better platform that could like do everything in the same place would be much better. Like let's say someone emails you their W-2 or like driver's ID and stuff like that. I think it'll be like easy to lose track of that. Instead, like you could use a platform to like keep track of all this stuff. I mean, maintenance requests as well. So like people text you.
These are certainly answers to the question, but I guess I'm having the same reaction to all of these examples, which is, does this not exist?
Not really. Like if you search it up, like if you search up on Google property management software for just like individual landlords, what you'll see is just a lot of companies that just when you click on the link, it just says like book demo. So it's basically for like big apartment complexes, and it's not for like just individual people who just want to manage like a few of their properties.
Okay, interesting. That distinction, by the way, of your target, I know you said it in parts of your pitch, but like maybe didn't feel that important to me until just now. I still wonder if it exists, but like far less, because then I could imagine like what you just said that got my investor/founder brain going is, okay, if it's true that it doesn't exist, it's probably because the business model of the property management SaaS companies charges in such a way that they only make slivers of money per rental unit. And so it only makes sense for them to build for very large property owners or management companies that have a lot of different units, because then you're making a little bit on each unit, and they haven't gone down market because smaller properties lack the ability to pay an amount that would be worth it, given they manage so few properties. So again, that actually did give me an ability to go, maybe I buy that it doesn't exist. So think about emphasizing that as part of your early pitch.
So just in the spirit of this place being like friend zone, safe space, full candid sort of feedback, it feels like your pitch isn't polished yet. The way I'm kind of hearing it, it sounds like you're articulating like a list of ideas or concepts that you've come to and that you believe if you put the summation of parts together, you'll have a company or a product. I feel like that's different than a pitch. I feel like you're kind of running me through like an idea you have, as opposed to a pitch for a business you're building. So that's one thing that I felt right out of the gate. But what I'd really want to hear, even if that is just your style and that's the way you want to do it, that's fine. But if you want to pull that off, I think you need to bring me along with maybe some like old school like user personas, because it seems like these are a lot of like what ifs and maybes, and then there's you. The n=1 is like you experience something, but tell me about an actual tenant, an actual landlord that you've talked to and you've met with, and then what they want. And then when you build this, they are going to fall in love with what they currently use and what they currently can't use. And I think it would answer a lot of your questions. Like they've looked at the market. There's nothing out there. They have to do everything in spreadsheets and paper and Venmo and Zelle, and taxes are a big pain in the butt. And that they would love this tool. That's like, okay, because now I'm not hearing it from you and it doesn't sound like a bunch of like guesswork or maybe ifs. It's like, no, this is for Steve or Joanna in San Diego.
Yeah, so my landlord currently, they said they'd love to use this product if like I came up with it. It's because like they do have a few properties, and I mean, like me not being able to pay rent on time, that was like a problem for them because I had to like contact Venmo. It took like about a week for them to receive the payments. I mean, I talked to a few other people. They've suggested the tax filing idea, which like, I took into account that. And just like people in general, they say like they've been like one of these people, they got a check from their tenant and they basically forgot to cash it out. And then in 3 months, I think it expired or something. And then so they had to like re-request it. So I feel like just like a way to electronically receive the payment would be a much better solution for them.
It's funny. I want to double down on his feedback in response to what you said, but I want to point something out. Every time you answer one of these questions, I like you more as a person who's an early founder doing discovery. So my feedback that's about to like maybe sound a little harsh is out of like, you still actually keep giving me nuggets of goodness, but it's still very unstructured. Let me give you a sense of what Marty's saying when your pitch isn't polished. What he means is you're an early pitch trying to be a later on pitch, and not that later on, but you're kind of like pre-seed and you're trying to be a seed stage founder. And that difference you are not going to be able to cover. And so even in trying to answer those questions, you will struggle. Embrace being a pre-seed founder. Let me tell you what that might sound like. Instead of saying, I talked to my landlord and they couldn't cash the check, I actually don't normally like hero stories. Every time I mention it, I actually give a lot of caveats like, Jane finds it hard to work out, so Jane needs my app because then Jane's gonna work out. But I actually think that's perfect for you. You're gonna say, I first talked to my landlord and then I talked to 4 more. And let me tell you something about landlords who only manage a few properties. They can't afford SaaS software that helps them manage these properties automatically. They usually have their nephew as their front of office for handling rent checks, collecting everything, taking it to the bank. Their accounting systems are pretty haphazard, and they're mostly okay with it because landlords in this country, I don't know if this is true or not, I'm just storytelling, make enough money such that like they're okay with this lost margin. But they actually still know they're losing money though. And so when I told them, hey, if I could replace a lot of the things that you do messily and give you 10% back or 20% back on what you do as a landlord, a lot of their eyes light up. And so what I'm doing is I have a series of experiments that I think are really interesting around accepting rent and screening tenants, et cetera, et cetera. And then you kind of end there. And so now the investor gets to say, I believe the story you just told, and I wouldn't mind betting on the series of experiments. Because that's the difference between a pre-seed, I made this term up, and a seed, is probably there's a little bit more of that experimentation has run its course already.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say on that is I was trying to think like, what did I mean when I said it, it wasn't polished? What would I like to have seen? And I think if this were like a hackathon and you were pitching your idea and we're going to decide if we're going to jump on that idea, I think this is a really great pitch for that hackathon, and I might want to work on this with you. I think if it's for an investment for a business, that is an investor I want to see become a billion-dollar enterprise and I'm going to get 100x return, I don't have a lot of confidence. And I think it's because I know it's because I'm not hearing any conviction. I'm hearing a lot of lists of things that could be and might be, and it's a lot of like features. And maybe if we put them all together, there's something there. But I'd rather you just tell me, and I'm just going to use a cheat, the power of 3s, but like, this thing I'm building does 3 core things. It collects payments faster, more efficiently. It automates the filing of taxes, and it does one more, just because 3 is great, right? For no other reason. And then, yes, it can do 1,000 other little things in there, but those other little things, like, they're kind of irrelevant. We don't care. You just do these really 3 big things. And these are 3 really important things. And if you do them, it saves money, or it reduces overdraft fees, or they make so much money that whatever you charge them will be insignificant, because like this is the value you provide will be so great. And I'll be like, okay, this makes sense to me. I got it. But I don't hear the conviction from you that like, I build this and they will come. It's like, okay, maybe they might want this, this, and this. And like, they would probably appreciate this, this, and this.
Yeah. For the sake of time, though, let me just say you're on the very early stage of the founder journey. I think Marty and I, as founders ourselves, can say, very jealous of you. It's the best part. So good luck continuing to experiment and finding that core vision. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a subscribe button. I actually don't know on what side I'd be pointing. It's somewhere here or here. And I think Marty would agree that if you are a founder who yourself wants to pitch here in New York, live in front of the audience and live on YouTube, there are links in the description below. Leave a comment on your favorite pitch at the end of this. Tell us about your least favorite pitch. Be nice about it. We would really appreciate your support. Hopefully, you're going to see a lot more of the feedback loop if we continue to get the community and ecosystem support. Early stage, I loved the way you gave that feedback, because I think it is about embracing it as that early stage founder, right? And deciding, hey, I actually do just have a list of ideas, and I have a list of desires for the world. And if you two have this sense of the world, I'm a person who's going to experiment. Would you like to give me a little bit of cash to run some series of experiments? But I think those early founders have to embrace it, because otherwise it sounds awkward. Yeah,
and on the positive side, I love founders' ability to see a problem, fix a problem. So is clearly frustrated with the experience that exists, noticed that his landlord was equally frustrated, and then said, hey, I think I have a solution to go solve that. And I think that's a true fight. He didn't sit there, didn't complain about it, didn't try to move apartments and find a different landlord, just said, hey, this is broken and it should be fixed. But to your point, like, I find it seems unlikely that this solution doesn't exist. And I'm a little worried that for a lot of founders, you'll find that like you have this great idea, you go and you Google it, and then, oh yeah, it's there. And then you kind of lose your steam for it. And I'm not saying that that's true, but I'd love it if he proved to us.
By the way, and if that's true, I love when a founder knows that and then goes, okay, I might be wrong about this, but I think the reason those haven't worked is X, Y, Z. And then even if it's still, pricing or this or that or go to market, okay, now I have to decide if I believe that you're going to fix the problems that the incumbent attempts had. But I love a founder who then brings that research too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next founder up.
Yeah.
Round of applause. Well, founder complete. Tell everyone your name.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Arjun, like
Arjun.
Argentina without the Tina.
That's good. Argentina without the Tina. That's so good. Okay, Arjun, you're going to have a minute to pitch and tell us what you're building and get some feedback. You ready?
Absolutely, always.
Awesome. What are you building?
So I was told I have a couple of minutes today to pitch my idea, but the fact of the matter is all of the entrepreneurs that are in here, the professional networkers, we have less than that amount of time to connect with someone, vibe with them, and get their contact information at a networking event. And God forbid, it's a conference, a 3-day conference. You have to do this rinse and repeat every single day. So with SelfTact, which is taking 2 words, selfie and contact, the idea is that you take a selfie with someone, a smart selfie, you get their information, it automatically emails them, texts them, shows you where you met the person, which venue for context, and we'll also 5 days later, we'll follow up for you, and you can export all that data into HubSpot or an existing CRM. We already have 2 patents. We already have scaled an existing product to 7 figures, and with your help, we can do it to 8.
Under a minute.
That was great. And I just love a founder that self-promotes.
I mean,
wearing the swag.
No,
Love it.
founder advice. Yeah,
there's another one underneath.
Yeah, is you are the billboard. Everyone's like, how do I get my first 100 users? Like, just be obnoxious wherever you go, so everyone knows.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Nice.
But also, I love how you made me understand the brand. Like,
Yep.
that was super clear, and then it became super clever, because at first I'm like, oh, what is it? It's like, so that was awesome. The only thing that I didn't get, and maybe it's just because you didn't, you had to do it in under a minute, but you had 15 seconds left, is I'm under the understanding of trying to be a networker and do sales, that there's a currently in the influencer world, there's a power to, if I meet somebody and I take a selfie and
Yeah.
I email that photo to them later, the conversion's a lot higher.
Way
The
better. In
response-
fact,
yeah.
we did it, and that's how I
Okay.
ended up here, right? Because I attached my selfie. I was like,
true.
hey,
So
got any
it's
slots
the
here?
only
And-
thing that
Yeah.
I think you could have fit that in the last 15 seconds, but like that is I mean, everything
Yeah.
else you're doing is cool. It's awesome, but like that.
Wait, by the way,
power.
what are you saying that this is a known fact?
I'm saying that when I should be in bed and I'm on Instagram doom scrolling, that this tip has popped up many times.
So what's interesting is, I might be, I have questions about
I do it
SelfTact.
now, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing about you mentioning this, I think this is so key. I have skepticism as to this pitch, and a few of them we'll talk about in a sec. But one of them is immediately assuaged a little bit by his example here. And I think the idea of you said it makes it the conversion, or you guys came to this conclusion. It seemed that like the likelihood there's going to be a follow-up interaction is higher. And one of the reasons that's really important to me in hearing this pitch is we're going to get into it as part of the other skepticism I have, but it's the utility of this is in an amorphous world. In other words, networking in general. How many people here enjoy networking? Raise your hand. Okay, more than I thought would raise their hand, because I feel like most people, how many people don't enjoy networking? Raise your hand. There we go. Okay, that made my point. So a lot of people, it's amorphous, right? Like when I go to network, how many results do I get? What are my results? What am I trying to get out of this thing? Even as a founder, when I'm like raising money, I might go to a thing that has some investors added or not, right? And so by tying outcomes and making things more deterministic, as in like you're going to get something out of the experience of using this in this otherwise amorphous world. And there's a better version of saying what I just said, but that is so important because then some of my other skepticisms might not matter as much. As in, you're going to get questions from me as to other players in the space.
Yep.
You're going to get questions from me as to like the awkward interaction of taking the selfie. We'll talk about that in a sec.
Yep.
But I'm a little bit more comforted that like, okay, there is an end to this, that all the prior attempts have still missed.
Yeah.
There's some point, because the other version of my head is they've all failed because there isn't a point. Networking sucks. It's not the apps that are the problem, it's that the thing sucks. But maybe the thing doesn't suck so much if only a solution existed to make it more effective.
Well, I thought it was a me problem when I was going to networking events. I was taking selfies, going in the photo album. I was then copying the photo, putting it into the Notes app. I used iPhones. And then I would put in, hey, met someone at the free agency. I met someone here, and this is what we talked about. Here's the number. Here's the... By the time I was done, I could have moved on to the next person much faster if I had something like SelfTact. And turned out when we started using it and people started seeing us use it, they were like, can I download it? And I was like, we haven't put it in the App Store yet. And we put it in the App Store. It just took off. We have thousands of selfies taken now, and we think this is truly the next big CRM for small businesses.
Oh, CRM for small businesses.
Pretty good.
Did you say that in the initial pitch?
Smart selfies for networking or a personal CRM.
Ooh, I don't know how I feel actually. You think it's a good thing. So let me
I
tell you
more
what happened
the
in my
CRM
head.
for small businesses. Well,
I didn't realize.
I like it because it carves out a niche. Because
It
it's
does.
like, oh, you're not going to compete against Salesforce or HubSpot. It's like, no. Like,
But I actually thought this was a
there's a
social app
gap
at first.
because HubSpot, if you really get it, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want to pay for that, but I do want something.
We want to sit on top of those tools. So if you use HubSpot or Salesforce, good for you. This is the clever way to go meet 20 people. And by the time you get back to the hotel or the office, all those
Let me tell you what's going on in my head now, though. I'm like, oh, wait, is this a personal CRM? Is this a social tool? Is this a professional CRM? So like, I'm similarly interested by the fact that you guys carved out a niche, but I was surprised by that niche and that moment, which means your pitch didn't tell it to me. Did you tell it to me in the pitch? Did I just miss it?
I will have to watch the rewind.
Okay. Did he tell it to us?
I didn't catch
Okay,
that it was
so I
that
think-
niche because
okay.
I just thought it was for anybody in
Yeah.
B2B SaaS sales, like
Yeah.
meeting people.
Or anyone who goes to a
Yeah.
networking event, which by the way,
because
has a
I
marketing
don't know how many
challenge.
like SMBs, are really good at the follow up.
We're mostly talking. So most of our customers are women between 30 and 55 years of age, and they're speakers, coaches, podcasters, real estate agents. So they're definitely
professional networkers.
Exactly. They're out and about, and their revenue and their income is based on networking and meeting people, but more importantly, following up and visually following up. Because to your point, that selfie, whether Sherveen or anyone else, when I text and say, hey, good to see you at that last weekend at the house party, love to, grab a coffee, they can scroll up and see immediately what my app has already sent them. The other even more interesting thing is that you can upload your entire phone book with the selfies and their information. It'll write introductions for you and slap the selfies together. So if you two don't know each other, you know me, you trust me, my selfie with Sherveen and my selfie with you will go in that introductory message so that you can trust the common party, and it will automatically write the intro as well.
That's not where I thought you were going when you said upload your phone book. I was, okay. Still a lot's going on in my brain. There are a lot of interesting pieces here. How long have you been doing this?
It's been just a couple of months. We actually scaled a marketing SaaS tool to 7 figures in total revenue. We think we can scale this even faster because, to be honest, not everyone in here needs a marketing tool, but everyone in here is here to meet someone. And
but you keep doing this thing. You're bouncing between what this could be. Okay, 3 things I'm going to get out of my head. One is don't mention the patents ever. Patents for this sort of business are a counter signal as to like, it's weird that the founder has a patent in like a social space. I don't know. I kind of want to know what your patent is, but I feel like it's going to be distraction. Patents don't wind up being the important part, which is execution. If you were the space company who went first, I'd want to know about that guy's patents.
Sure.
But in this case, I know founders need this advice for the first time, but like it has a weird vibe. So just take it out. Second component, you're bouncing between a lot of interesting concepts, and you found me interested in a lot of them, which has surprised me because I'm skeptical of this concept because so many have tried it. But let me tell you what I mean. You talked about these professional networkers and all these people who are using it, and I was like, maybe the right go-to-market for this product no one else has tried is to carve out the power users and say, my product is going to have 1,000 features for them, but by the way, it's not for the general networker. But then you said, look at the crowd here, they're looking to meet people. But then you said small business CRM, and then we talked about HubSpot and Salesforce. And we're bouncing between a lot of these. That's not a bad thing in general, but when you have a tarpit idea like networking and contact information sharing, I think it might be. Because now I'm going, he's doing the same thing they all did, which is going for generalized networking tooling, and that doesn't seem to work. Anytime you've mentioned a niche, I've gotten excited about a part of it, but then I get unexcited when I realize, he's also going to go after a bunch of other things. Let me say one other thing. The reason the phone book thing was interesting is because that got to personal CRM, and I was like, interesting. What if what he was doing is saying, you upload your entire phone book, and then you can reconcile selfies against it?
Yeah.
And now it's not just about who you met at this event, it's who you met ever.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
If you have photos of them or you go on LinkedIn, now you can suddenly have a really rich...
Well, here's another thing. I literally just saw this on TikTok a few days ago where... The news that came out was about QR codes and those NFC cards that people keep tapping on each other's phones. Well, turns out parking meters that are supposed to have QR codes are actually having QR codes, fake QR codes, that are taking you to a website that you're not supposed to be, right? So would you come up to me and I have no idea who you are at a conference? And...
I don't like this again. Let me tell you why. Interesting fact. Again, everything you say is interesting for some reason, but it's not why someone should use your product.
Well, I would say taking a selfie is a lot safer than scanning something.
But you have so many other challenges of getting people to do this. Yeah. And I don't think like convincing them that it's safer is going to be that compelling. It's an interesting fact that like maybe you put it in the appendix of a deck.
Got it.
But for an investor mindset, I'm like, oh man, how's he going to get people to download this? How's he going to get people to use it the first time? There's so many other objections. I don't have like this is going to save us from QR codes desire out of this.
Got it.
I'm curious where you're landing on a lot of because I have this again, it's a maze of good things that I'm getting lost in.
Well, yeah, to sum up what I think I'm hearing you say, and I feel this with parts, because parts of the pitch I love. Yeah. Other parts is, I just think, again, general founder advice, you don't want to do or say anything that like provokes questions. Like I don't want to be thinking of questions. I just want to be falling in love, right? Okay. And so you'll say something like, you've got this ICP, mostly women. And then you'll say something that contradicts that and say, hey, it's everyone in this room. It's like, well, this is a pretty diverse room. And so who's it for? Now I've got questions, right? Sure. You can answer those questions, but it's like, it'd be better if I just didn't have the question. Right? Okay. I love that you talked about an ICP and you had strong conviction on it, but then you broke the conviction. And it's like, it wasn't a bad thing. It can be both for women and real estate agents and for everyone in the room. But now I'm just like, I got questions. And it's like, you made me ask questions, and it wasn't bad questions to ask, but it slowed things down. And again, you only had a minute, and then we've only got 10 minutes to do this. I would just, be like super, because there is something here, but I'd get to to your point with security. If you just thought about like what your Instagram ad is, I don't think you tell anybody, hey, more secure networking, or there's insecurity in QR code network. I don't think anyone here has like ever thought that was a problem to solve. Yeah. So I don't even think it's worth mentioning. But I do think if you told them, hey, look, what I saw when I saw that one TikTok was when you take a picture with somebody and you put it in the email follow-up, they are more likely to respond.
And convert.
That's cool. That's interesting. And I like, for my own I'm more likely to remember. Yeah. Honestly, like I'm just bad at names. I'm not going to remember everybody. And some people are going to connect on LinkedIn. I'm just like, I don't remember.
Well, the other day I was like, I know someone on 19th Street, but I don't remember the person's name. Zoomed in, I could see the 5 people I know or met on that street. So it's more visual. To your point, it's more intuitive. And we're always like, oh, I met that person at the coffee shop, but I just can't remember her name or his name. And this, you can just zoom in and you'll
What I
find.
would love you to do is just tell, because I think you heard this from me that, oh, this is a trend.
Yeah.
Something started here.
Yeah.
People that know are doing this.
Yeah.
And I am going to build the
They're
infrastructure
doing it
layer
manually.
to support it. Yes.
Exactly.
And so I think that's where you'd get the education. It's like, oh, Marty does this? Like, this
Yeah.
is a real thing? It's like, oh, yeah, man, this is what the cool kids are doing.
And you can also
And it
remove the
works.
background to your logos or sponsors or whatever you'd like.
You're doing the thing he said not to do again. Because I have
Because I
questions.
don't think anyone asked for that, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
interesting, cool, but tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
Like
they're
yeah.
fun features, right? And,
Yeah.
and by the way, he used this product when he met me. So I've seen the text, the email. I've seen how this manifests. There are a lot of interesting
Land to
features.
be on the show.
There you go, exactly. Because
So it
someone dropped
works.
out, so I responded to you. Said, "Hey, okay, fine." But these are accessories to something that again has killed so many ambitious and smart founders, right? As in, this is a tarpit idea. How many people know what the tarpit startup is? Tarpit idea. Okay, tarpit idea. These tend to be problems that we all share. So young people, especially, will fall into this where it's like, I want to work out, I want to date, I want to take notes, whatever it might be. And so a lot of early stage founders will try to solve their own problems, and I want to network. And so they'll build apps in this space, and what ends up happening is they find we all share the problem kind of, but it's not painful enough such that they want to pay for or change their behavior for the solution. So a lot of startups will spawn, fight with each other, and no one wins. And and so whenever you're going to these adjacencies, my brain panics that the same thing will happen to you because you're not doing what Marty mentioned, which is like taking a baseball, but it's made of steel. And you're just like throwing a baseball made of steel. You're throwing a lot of baseballs. That was weird.
One thing I'll say though, when you're pitching, the easiest way to know
Pitching or pitching?
pitching that it's going well, even if it feels like it's not going well, is somebody who's a stickler for the clock lets you go way over time.
Exactly. We are.
If you talk to a VC and you get 10 minutes and they let you go 10 minutes and 30 seconds, that meeting went well.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
how
when-
about this? We take a selfie. I take a selfie with you. We've already done
Go
that.
for it. You guys
go for it. Let's
have the
It'll
moment.
reach out to you and we can follow for a coffee.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm in.
Go ahead. Go for
Okay,
it.
let's do it. All right. So since you're not a member, the facial recognition will be turned off. But here's how it's going to work. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate it.
That was fun.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
always good when you can demo too.
Yeah, exactly.
Check your phone.
He is that walking billboard.